solve equations by using these different properties. Some we did in geometry. You might recognize this from geometry. These top three, and then the other ones are from Algebra 1. So you can read through these properties. So example 1, I'm going to use the properties to solve for my variable, z. So I'm going to get my z's on one side. So I'm going to subtract 5z from each side. These canceled out. So I have 3z plus 12 equals 21. Subtract 12, 3z equals 9, z equals 3 is my answer. And this one I want to get the t's on each side, so I'm going to add 4t. And then I'm going to add 3. So it's going to be 6t equals 12, t equals 2 is my answer. In the next example, I'm just going to add a little bit by doing the distributive property. You don't have to do the distributive property on this one. You could subtract 6. I'll show you. I'm going to subtract 6. So I have 2 times y minus 3 equals 64. And then divide both sides by 2. So then you have y minus 3 equals 32. And then add 3 to both sides, so y equals 35. In this one, I'm going to do the distributive property. So I have 6t minus 12 equals 18 minus 4t. So what you want to do is you want to get your t's on one side again. So this is going to be 10t minus 12 equals 18. And then 10t equals 30. T equals 3. Okay, so then not only should you be able to solve for one variable, but you should be able to solve if there's multiple variables. So this is a formula, you might recognize it. It's a formula for a trapezoid. So in this case, we're going to solve for the height. So we need to get rid of this 1/2. We need to get rid of this b1, b2. So you could either get rid of the b1 and b2 by dividing b1 plus b2. I can divide this because it's 1/2 times h times b1 plus b2. Or you could also get rid of the 1/2 first if you want. So if I get rid of 1/2, I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2. So I have 2a, these two would cancel out because 1/2 times 2 is 1, equals h times the quantity b1 plus b2. So because you're multiplying h times b1 plus b2, I'm going to divide both sides by b1 plus b2. This cancels out, this cancels out. So in the end, you have the height equals twice the area divided by base 1 plus base 2. The next one, solve for base 2. So this time we're trying to get this one by itself. You still need to get rid of this 1/2, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. That's going to cancel that out. So if you're trying to get to this quantity inside the parentheses, I would not do the distributive property. I would get rid of this h. This is h being multiplied by this quantity, so you can divide both sides by h next. So you have 2a over h equals b1 plus b2. Now you're going to solve for b2, so you have to subtract b1 from each side. So it's going to be 2a over h minus b1 equals b2 is your final answer. And then the last one, volume equals length with height. There's no symbols in between here, so this is multiplying. So to solve for L and get rid of the WH, you're just going to divide both sides by WH. So it's going to be L equals the volume divided by width times height. So we just did solving when there's multiple variables in. there. So restrictions means, to find restrictions when you're solving for equation means you need to think about what values of any variable will make the equation undefined. So what you're looking for is, are there any cases where you had something like an x in the denominator? We know that no matter what we do to solve for x, we could not have x be 0. If x was 0, then this function would be undefined. You can't divide by 0. So keep in mind that you can never divide by 0. So you have to check the equation in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, and see where you have a variable in the denominator that could possibly make your equation be undefined. So now we're going to not only solve for a variable, but we're going to figure out any restrictions. And our restrictions will take the format of this. So to solve for C, I have two equal ratios. So what I do is I cross multiply. So this is going to be C times A equals 2 times the quantity A plus B. So I'm trying to solve for C, so I'm going to divide both sides by A, like this. So my final answer is C equals 2 times A plus B all over A. So if I'm going to state any restrictions, I'm going to check the beginning of the equation and look at my denominators. I have C in the denominator, so there's no way I could have C be 0. So I'm going to write C can't be 0. Then I'm going to look at when I'm solving, what are my denominators? Well, right here when I'm solving, I'm dividing by A, so I know that A can't be 0. And then my final answer, I also have A in the denominator, so A can't be 0. So my restrictions are C cannot be equal to 0 and A cannot be equal to 0. The next one, I'm solving for x. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add 15. So I have these x's right here. So I have ax plus bx equals 15. And then I want to combine ax and bx, but I don't know what to do. I mean, I do, but it's our first problem that we have that's kind of difficult, or we haven't had one like this. So if I'm trying to solve for x, I want to get x by itself. But I can see in here that both of these have x, so I could actually factor out an x. So now I'm going to have a plus b on the inside. So now if I factor out an x, I can divide by a plus b. So x is equal to 15 over a plus b. So I'm going to go and find my restriction. So I'm looking for something that I have variables in the denominator that I don't want the function to have a denominator of 0. So I look in the beginning, I don't have a denominator, so I'm good. Oh, right here when I'm solving, I have a plus b in the denominator. I don't want a plus b to be equal to 0. So I'm going to solve for one of these and there's no way that a could be equal to negative b. No matter what happens with x, we cannot have a be equal to negative b because then we'd have a 0 in the denominator. And then the last one, I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract b first. So I have d minus b equals 2x over a. I'm going to get rid of the a and the 2 on each side. So I'm going to multiply the top by a, so I'm going to put this in parentheses, and the bottom by 2. So this is what x equals. X equals a times the quantity d minus b all over 2. So if I do the restrictions, I'm going to look through and I'm going to look at my denominators. In the beginning, I have an a, so a can't be equal to 0. I'm dividing by 2. That doesn't matter if I'm dividing by 2. 2 is a number, it's not a variable, so that's good. And at the end, I don't have a variable denominator, I just have a 2. So my only restriction is a can't be equal to 0. And then 5 and 6 are examples of solving equations in word problems. So a rectangle is twice as long as it is wide. The perimeter is 48. So if you have a rectangle, the perimeter is adding up all the sides. The width plus the width plus the length plus the length. So the perimeter is 2 times the length plus twice the width. So I'm going to use this part of the equation. It's twice as long as it is wide. That means that if the width was 3, then the length was 6. So it means that the length equals twice the width. So I'm going to take my 48 and plug it in for the perimeter. I'm going to take my L equals 2W and plug it in right here. So it's 2 times 2W plus 2W. So 48 equals 4W plus 2W is 6W. The width equals 8 centimeters. So therefore the length has to be twice that. So length is 16 centimeters. Does it make sense? Does 8 plus 8 plus 16 plus 16 add up to 48? Yes, it does. In the last example, the sides of a triangle are in ratio. So you have sides of a triangle are in ratio of 12, 13, and 15. The perimeter is 120. Find each side length. So the ratio, it's not the side length. The side length doesn't mean it's 12 plus 13 plus 15. It means that 12 times some scale factor of x plus 13 times the scale factor of x plus 15 times the scale factor of x equals 120. So then you would combine these. So I'm going to combine these two. So this is 25 plus 15x is 40x's, has to be 30, or 120. Oops, I jumped ahead. X has to be 3. So what is the side length? Side length, you need to plug in if x is 3. The side length has to be 36 centimeters, 39 centimeters, and plug in 45 centimeters.